Delighted to have Seán Gavin in the Irish Traditional Music Archive here today. Very welcome, Seán.
Thanks. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so hoping just to have a little chat about your background in music and listen to you play. Would you tell us a little bit about your background, where you experienced traditional music first, and a bit about your early years?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I grew up in the Detroit area in Michigan, and my dad is a fiddle player, Mick Gavin from Clare. So I learned a lot from him growing up. He used to play in the house and play for us when we were kids and stuff. And my older brother Michael plays the fiddle and the banjo, bouzouki and guitar, and sings. My dad plays the melodeon as well. So mostly grew up listening to them play.
Yeah.
And my parents also used to put on concerts. My mother Anna and my dad, they used to have a lot of bands coming through all the time, and they'd stay in the house. And once we moved to the second house I grew up in, I actually had my own room. I was spoiled. But only every other weekend, because there'd be bands coming in all the time. So that was great to meet a lot of legends and friends of my parents and stuff that'd be coming through all the time. So I kind of grew up just playing little bits and pieces. My dad sent me to take violin lessons when I was probably, I don't know, 6 or something like that. But the first instrument I ever played was the bowron. And I was inspired by Johnny Ringo,
very good,
who was a hero of mine. And he used to come through with, I think, Arcady and different bands, and I always kind of was in awe of him. He's such a great character. And so I always wanted to play the bowron. And my first trip to Ireland, I was probably 4 or 5. It was just me and my dad took me over. And he bought me a little bowron in Galway, actually, when we were up there. And so I used to bang away on that to the dismay of all other musicians around me. And that was kind of my first instrument that I tried to figure out. Then he sent me for violin lessons, and I learned when I was a kid a little bit from Anya Nagawan.
All right.
Yeah, Anton's daughter, oldest daughter. So she lived in Cleveland for a summer, and then in Detroit as well. And we used to go down to Cleveland. They used to have 3 festivals down there every summer, so we'd go down for those. It's only a couple hours from Detroit.
Yeah.
She taught me the fiddle when I was very young, and then I gave it up once she moved back.
Yeah.
I started playing electric guitar and AC/DC songs and stuff like that. And then I got into the whistle. There was a man. There's a guy named Leo McNamara from Scariff in Clare, and he came to Detroit when I was probably 9 or something like that. And he stayed with us for a little while. He used to work with my dad, and he played the whistle and the flute. And I kind of admired him a lot too. I used to follow him around, and he was always very good to me as a kid. So he got me started on the whistle.
Yeah. What type of style had he got?
He was interesting. He was from Scariff, so he had a lot of that repertoire, but he loved Matt Malloy a lot, as everybody does.
Yeah.
And so he had kind of touches of that in his playing too. He is a lovely player. I think he lives out in California now.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him for a while, but he was a really, really good player. And so he was there for a few years and then headed off to the West Coast, and I kind of just was figuring it out. Terrence McKinney, who's a piper and whistle player in Detroit, another student of Al Purcell's actually, he taught me the whistle then for a while. Kind of once a week in a group class kind of a thing. But I didn't really have any formal teaching for long periods or anything like that. Just kind of go here for a bit and go here to another place for a while. And another flute player came to town, John Craven from Galway. John's a great flute player. I think he's back here now. So he was in Detroit for a while. He kind of got me going on the flute. I was playing the silver flute in the school band. And actually, I see there's a picture of Kieran O'Hare over here. I remember one time up at Milwaukee Fest when I was about 10 years old. I snuck out of the hotel room at about 1 in the morning and went searching for sessions, and I had the silver flute when I was about 10 or 11, something like that. And I went up to the rooftop, the Park East, where all the good sessions used to be. And Kieran saw me and he said, "Come over here and let me see that flute. Why are you playing this thing? Why are you playing this silver flute?" And he held it over the edge of the roof,
Yeah,
of the roof of the parquet like this.
Yeah.
He said, "You know what you should do with this thing? You should do that."
Yeah.
He dropped it and caught it again.
Yeah.
So a few months later, I got a wooden flute.
Yeah.
Brendan McKinney, actually, the owner of Chief O'Neill's pub in Chicago, Terrence's brother, he sent us a flute. Terrence and Brendan would be good friends of my parents.
Yeah.
So he sent us a flute that I could try to get going on, and it was tough. It was tough to play, but I think that was the point. It's like, if you can get a sound out of this thing, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
So I was playing that for a while, and John taught me a good bit, and my dad used to take me down to Chicago. We used to go stay with the Henrys.
Wow.
When I was a kid, like my parents, my mom is great friends with Maggie, and my dad, and my dad was great friends with Kevin and Pauline, of course, and so we'd stay with Maggie and Jerry. Maggie being Kevin's daughter, and her husband Jerry, great people. So we stayed with them when we were kids a lot, and so I'd go listen to Kevin, and he would take me up to Larry Nugent. My dad would take me up to Larry Nugent to get a few lessons from him, and it was kind of just here and there. He'd take me out to festivals in the Catskills and over here to take workshops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I was very lucky that, my dad took me all over the place to to learn music. And
he must have been delighted too when you got the
once
the
I gave
bug.
up, once I gave up the Bowron.
Yeah. And the AC/DC as well.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Would you play as a tune on the flute from the?
Sure.
Yeah, it's just something that relates to your early years or something that stands out.
Yeah, sure. Let me think now. I mean, there's some good tunes. I haven't played them for a while. I'll probably mess them up now, but I think one of the first reels that John Craven taught me when I was young was Patty Taylor's.
Lovely.
Which is a great flute tune. I'll see if I can remember it. I'm not kidding about that.
Lovely.
I think that might be one of the first reels I learned on the flute.
Yeah.
And then, I learned a lot of tunes from my dad, but he would never, it wasn't like the way we think of formal teaching now, or, somebody play you a phrase and you play it back. We never did any of that, really.
Yeah.
You just kind of play, and you just, if you either got it or you didn't.
Yeah.
So I probably had some interesting versions back then.
Yeah.
Like when you're a kid, and you don't really think about it the same way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You kind of just get on with it.
Yeah.
And figure out something that kind of works.
Yeah.
So I might have, I don't remember them now, but I might have come up with some interesting little ways around. Because, my brother and my dad are both fiddle players, and they would play a lot of fiddle tunes.
Yeah.
So that's, when I was young, I used to try to figure out how to play in weird key and A. It's just tricky on the flute, a lot of A and E and F and stuff like that. So I used to pretend that I had the keys long before I got them. Spent a lot of time trying to think about how I would play with them, if I could. And then when I did eventually get them, I kind of had a feeling of what to do with them already a little bit.
Yeah.
And spent a long time trying to figure out all that kind of stuff, which now I don't use as often, but
yeah,
kind of more
there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere. I kind of think more now the flute has its own sound and its own kind of set of sounds, like its own dialectic, I guess, kind of thing. I'd be more interested in that these days, but it's definitely, it was a good challenge. It was a good challenge to try to keep up with them.
Yeah. Who are the flute players you enjoy at the moment?
You mean who are around now, or like
like that you're listening to recordings or
there's
flute players or what?
Well, Kevin, of course, I always loved Kevin's playing. When I was a kid, even, like I was saying, you're a kid, you don't really, when I was a kid anyway, maybe you did, but I didn't really think analytically about anything. The concept of critical thinking wasn't really something that I knew about until I was more formally educated, So you kind of just perceive things a bit differently. But there was always something about Kevin's playing that was very special, that captured me, but I couldn't tell you at that time, and I'm not sure still if I can, but I couldn't put my finger on what it is. Like a lot of the teachers that I would have gone to, they really focus a lot on tone and about rhythm and ornamentation, like playing really crisp rolls and stuff like that. But that's all kind of tangible stuff. Whereas whatever kind of magic Kevin had is not in the realm of the tangible. It's something deeper than that. So
material or something organic with him.
Exactly. So that's kind of still something that I am always seeking out. So I love that style. I mean, Larry McDonough, that kind of playing. I love Eddie Cahill. A lot of those Sligo flute players, but there's great flute players from all over. I mean, I really like Paddy Taylor's playing a lot, Paddy Carty, and a lot of the East Galway flute players. There was that CD of Eddie Maloney that came out a few years ago. That's great stuff on there. Really great playing. And, it's an interesting combination of both of those worlds. You have a lot of the kind of tangible stuff and then also kind of the mystery. There's I'm finding new ones. Like there's a guy, Jim McGowan, who was on some of those radio broadcasts. He was a great player. Really interesting versions and different phrasing, I guess. A lot of the phrasing is kind of more, trying to think more about that now. It's almost like when I'm listening to music like that, I'm trying to listen for phrases and not notes. Kind of like when you're reading, you're not reading the letters, you're reading the words or even groups of words. It's kind of, that's what I'm trying to get at with my listening as well. But I love Peter O'Loughlin, of course, was a great player, and PJ Crotty, and there's so many, so many great players out there. So the recording on the is it the McNamara collection on the ITMA recordings of John Blessing on there? Really great stuff. Really great to hear that. So lively. Mick Woods and that kind of vein as well was great. Really great player. There's so many,
Will you play us another tune there?
Sure. Let's see now. Well, Kevin used to play the battering ram a lot, and he used to tell a story about it. And he'd say, the battering ram was a device that was used to knock down people's houses during the evictions. That you can hear the sound of the battering ram at the end of each verse, 2 knocks. And that's the sound of the battering ram. And that always stuck with me. So maybe I'll try that one.
lovely. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. You were telling me yesterday about some of the techniques, subtleties you picked up as well from Kevin, and you mentioned dribbling. And, would you talk us through a few of those type of nuances?
Yeah. Well, the dribbling was what he used to talk about. He used to have a lot of great little, ways and unique finger work and stuff. Like I was saying, Kevin, a lot of the beauty in his music comes from the things you can't really put your finger on. But there's a few things that he did that were very unique and that you can hear. There's some older players used to do that it's kind of lost now. But I think dribbling is like tripling is what he means, So it depends on the note, I guess, you're playing. But he used to say to keep that top finger going all the time. And I always kind of thought of it, like the old Sligo players had that great triplets that they used to play. So, like that kind of a thing. But he'd add a little bit with the breath as well, and which kind of covered it up and made it hard to figure out. So he used to play something like... like something like that.
Yeah.
Or on the A, sometimes then he'd just do two of these, doubling and tripling.
Yeah.
So something like... that, and he'd occasionally do like something with that would almost be like a backwards roll. You do this part first and then the tap. So like that. I guess the tap first, rather. Sorry. You kind of mix them up, both in there, and then play regular rolls too.
Yeah.
Not as often, but when you have that many options, you don't gotta play them that often.
Yeah. Be careful, other people don't take it too easily.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, he was very generous with his knowledge and his expertise, and I was fortunate to spend a lot of time in his house, and himself and Pauline couldn't have been nicer and more welcoming.
Yeah.
And I think he had a lot of ancient secrets, So lucky to learn some of that.
What type of age do you recall when you first encountered him?
Oh, well, when I first encountered him, I was only probably like 5 or 6. So we used to go up to Milwaukee Fest pretty regularly when I was a kid. The first time I was there, I was only a baby. And my parents, I remember there's a story about, I have 2 older brothers, Patrick and Michael, and Pat's 8 years older and Mike's 10 years older.
Okay, yeah.
So I was, I was only an infant, probably the first time I was up there. And my parents parked the car outside of the Park East, and we were all asleep. So they just left us, locked the car, and left us there.
That's how you were able to sneak out at night time with the silver flute.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I didn't have a silver flute yet at that point, but they went into the Park East to play a few tunes, and somebody saw that we were there and called the police.
Oh wow!
And the police came and they took us.
Oh wow!
They took us out of the car and down to the police station. My parents came out a little while later and freaked out, had no idea what was going on, and so that's the funny story. I don't remember that now, but I'm sure I would have known. I would have been around Kevin since I was my family had been good friends with him since before I was around. So but the first time I remember, this is one of the times we were down staying with Maggie and Jerry. That when I was probably only 6 or 5 or 6 or something like that. Before I really played, or I always loved music, but you don't know why. I sometimes wish I could get back to that before the rational, analytical mind came in. Go back to the
instinctiveness.
Exactly. You never get it back. Once it goes, that's it. There's no returning, unfortunately. But I remember very clearly Kevin's The One Zone Place, the CD launch. We went down to Chicago for that, and I was playing the silver flute at that point, and I would sit in next to him, and he played a few tunes with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. I remember that very well.
Yeah.
And Maggie's a great player too, you know, great flute player and whistle and fiddle as well.
Yeah.
Very unique player,
Yeah.
unique style, and she has a lot of Kevin's magic too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we, like in Milwaukee every year, Kevin and Verona would often come over.
Yeah.
And so they would be playing with, my dad would play with them in the Park East. So that was kind of the session we'd always go to. So I remember running around as a kid, and they'd all be playing. Which was great. It was really good memories back then.
Yeah.
It's back when they had traditional music at that festival.
Speaking, well, the only time I met Kevin was when he was over for Tony McMahon's play, The Well, you know, and I remember going to hear it. But you had a story about a tin whistle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Kevin had this old Clark. He said belonged to O'Neill.
Yeah.
And I think there's some recordings on it. There's a great record that came out called Soppin' Up the Gravy, Old Time Fiddlin'. You ever hear that one?
No.
It's all mostly old time, but Johnny McGreevy's on there, and Kevin's on there.
Yeah.
And he plays the Galway Rambler, and he plays Drowsy Maggie. It's the best whistle playing I ever heard. It's amazing. Wow. Really, really good. And I think that's on that whistle. That would have been in the early 70s, I think.
Yeah.
But then he said he was in Dublin, and it went missing somehow. I wasn't sure how, but maybe it's floating around here somewhere.
Yeah, so if someone's watching this, and has that whistle.
Anybody has that
whistle.
Has a
good time, yeah. No questions asked. Just return it.
Please return,
yeah. Would you play as a tune on the whistle? Is that
sure?
Too much?
Yeah. Let's see here now. This one?
Yeah.
I haven't played this one now before, but
this is one we made earlier. Yeah.
Is it safe?
We'll find out. Yeah.
Very cool. I haven't played this before, so. Let's see now. Well, maybe I'll play one of them that Kevin played on that record. I'll try the Galway Rambler.
Great.
Like that. Again, if I can remember it.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
No, I can't do it as well as he can, but this thing is fun.
Yeah.
It's very got that real old sound, you know?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Do you know something that strikes me sometimes about Chicago and that part of the States as well, that they're like Johnny McGreevy on the fiddle and the Henry's influence as well. It seems to be very the sound is very rooted in tradition and in a way it hasn't got that kind of clean, sterile, tangible layer. You know, there's Is that something? Is that a wrong or an ignorant assumption?
No, I don't think so. No, I think that there was a really great gang there. I'm sure you saw Richie Piggott's book. He recounts all kinds of great music that was there, and there was real hardy players like Kevin, and it's like kind of what I was saying earlier about the intangibles. A lot of times we could get bogged down in the more physical, I guess, in the music, like all the precision and accuracy and things like that, and lose the message of it.
Yeah.
Like it's not the best poet, or sorry, it's not the best poet's not the one with the best handwriting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I think that was the spirit, and especially a lot of times people who left kind of hung on to their culture even tighter. You know, because like but down at Lanigan's on the south side, 111th, that's where Kevin used to play every Sunday. And it was all, you know, when I started going down there, I moved to Chicago when I was probably 19 or something like that. And it was, you know, all people in their 70s and 80s that would get together, and some young people as well that would be learning from him. But they all, you know, they had a great community with each other, even though they were from all over Ireland. But they really, they really, you know, they hung on to their accents were as thick, you know, in the way they spoke as they were than the way they played. You know, and so I think that a lot of the people who learned from them over the years held on to that kind of, or that's just how they learned. So the hardiness of the music and the kind of the beef. I guess, you know, it was definitely focused there. You know.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Like, it's like the arty is a good description as opposed to kind of 3D printing. You know, it's
right.
It's, speaking of people that kept traditions going, that the set of pipes you have in front of you, and Al Purcell and Leo Rose, could you talk us through? Your piping.
Absolutely. Yeah. So after I was playing the whistle and the flute a little bit, my dad asked me if I wanted to play the pipes. My brother Patrick always was a big lover of the pipes, even though he didn't play music himself. He's a great listener, but the pipes are his favorite instrument, so he really pushed me towards them as well. And then my dad was good friends with Al Purcell. We'd call him Purcell, I guess you'd call him here. But he, you know, he asked me did I want to learn them, and my dad is good friends with Mickey Dunn, so he got in touch with Mickey, and Mickey got me a set from Killian O'Brien practice set, which is a pretty good start.
Yeah.
So I got a hold of those.
You must have skipped a waiting list there back in that's in the 90s.
It would have been in the 90s, yeah. So I don't know if it was one that Mickey had or something or what. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure he just kind of bumped us, you know. Thanks, Mickey. But then I got a hold of those, and my dad would take me down to Al. Al lived on the other side of town, on the east side of Detroit. So he'd take me over there once a week. And then Al did group classes at a place called the White Heather Club, which is a Scottish club, every Thursday night. So I'd go to that as well. And so I'd go to Al most weeks, twice a week. And I'd go down to the basement, and he had all of his tapes and recordings and his, you know, great sets of pipes that he had. And he would teach me tunes. And again, like the way he taught wasn't kind of what I think of as the conventional way nowadays, where it's like you play a phrase and you make the kid play it back for you. Al did some of that, but it was still, he wouldn't get too pedantic. He'd be very patient and kind of a lot of, you know, which I'm trying to start to do a bit of that now, where it's like if there's a student who doesn't quite play it exactly the same as you, but it's close and it sounds good, that's probably all right. Let them off, you know, let them do their own thing. So he was very good like that. But he was a real gent, and his wife Anne, she's a great lady. She was always so sweet and so good to us all. So we'd go down there and stay for a few hours. And Al was kind of happy he was another man who was very, very generous with his time and his knowledge. And so he passed away a few years after I started learning. And so I kind of tried to figure it out as best I could from there, and I realized after a while that I kind of didn't do my homework, a lot. You know, I was on a trip to New York actually with my friend Devin Shepard. We were going from Chicago to New York, and we played a session at Chief O'Neill's. We were done at midnight, and we left to go to New York, and we drove straight through the night all the way out there, and that was a great trip. But we had a couple of these old compilations, Past Masters. And there was another one, The Wheels of the World. And so we put on those on the car, and it was like mostly recordings made in New York. So we thought neither of us had really spent a ton of time, you know, analytically listening to a lot of that stuff. But we had at the time, we were listening a lot to fiddle playing, especially. You know, we'd call them flaws. We'd put on like, okay, now let's pick your favorite track of Tommy Peoples and your favorite one of Frankie Gavin, and then we'll listen to them next to each other and compare and contrast, and you know, we were getting very kind of analytical about it at that time. And then we put on those CDs, and we were both, we're thinking about like the rhythm of the rolls and the precision of all the tangible stuff like I was talking about earlier. And then we put on those CDs, and we were both kind of blown away at the how great the players were. Like, it was kind of a thing where back in them days, or probably still today, that younger people think that the older generation doesn't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Of course, it's completely the opposite.
Yeah.
So we realized, especially there was that track of Neely Boyle playing The Pigeon on the Gate.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, that's magical,
Yeah.
And Frank O'Higgins was on there, and of course Coleman and Morrison and Cloran and all that. And so we were kind of blown away, and that was on that trip really that I kind of said, this is probably true of the flute also.
Yeah.
So then I wanted to go back and go looking for all the flute playing recordings I could and see what I was missing there. And then of course I was in Chicago. I was like, Kevin is as good as anybody's ever been,
Yeah.
So I started to go visit him every week or about every week or two, go down and see him, and he had great recordings. And then of course he's gave me one of these recordings here. I think it's this one. It was all some of the Dunn cylinder collection, which was a lot of Toohey and Delaney and all that, James Early and stuff.
Yeah.
And of course there was so much technical brilliance on there on the pipes, and it was, like I said, I hadn't really after Al passed away, I listened to a lot of stuff that was around at the time that was popular.
Yeah.
And when I heard that stuff on the piping, I was like, what is this? I've never come
it's
across.
Explosive.
And all the technical brilliance in it, which is tangible.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So then I decided to try to restart.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to forget and try to start over, and try to erase my bad habits.
Yeah.
And start from scratch, So that was really changed the way I thought about it a lot.
Yeah.
Quite a bit,
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Yeah, there's a assumption that humanity is always progressing, and younger, but in art, that doesn't necessarily stack up. Like listen to like McFadden and Mrs. Kenny and Edward Cronin from a fiddle perspective, and you're like, this is these guys are still way better.
We've lost. We've actually lost.
It's not just
steps.
a preference. It's like, whoa,
exactly.
Things aren't going in a straight progressive line here.
Yeah,
you need to go back to
It's hard to convince a young person of that.
But
the proof is in the pudding. I mean. The recordings are there.
So pound for pound boxers or something.
That's right.
Not going up against Cronin.
Yeah.
Would you play as a tune on the pipes?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So this set belonged to Al. This set here, and Al learned from Leo Rosem, and his father Leo Purcell and Leo Rosem were very good friends. I think Leo Rosem might have been the best man at Leo Purcell's wedding or something like that. So, as far as I can tell, this set. Is the one that they got in the early 50s. And I think the earliest letter, Emmett told me anyway, that the earliest letter is from 54, where he's asking for replacement mounts because they cracked in the winter in Detroit.
Right,
It's so dry,
Yeah.
But, well, there's one I've been playing a lot that I learned first actually from Seamus Begley, the Snowy Breasted Pearl. Seamus used to sing it.
Yeah.
And he sang it beautifully, and he told me John McCormick sang it, so I went and listened to his recording, and then I found the recording of Leo Rosem playing it with some amazing regulator parts and really, really beautiful. So maybe I'll give that one a try.
Lovely, yeah.
I'll just tune up here for a second, make sure I'm
take your time.
not too bad. Well, it's not perfect, but it's as good as I'm going to get it today, so. So I'll give it a try. Here's the Snowy Breasted Pearl.
fantastic. Yeah. Great sound off them, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. Very fortunate to have them. So after Al passed away, they kept him in the family.
Yeah.
In case, some of his grandkids might play or something like that. And a few years ago, his daughter, Aline, decided to move them and wanted them to go to somebody who had a connection with Al and a connection with Detroit. So I was very lucky to be the person to end up with them. So I'm delighted with them. And I'd like to thank especially Benedict Kohler for reading them up for me. Yeah, Benedict's a wizard.
Yeah. Sound fantastic. You're in the right hands, that's for sure. Seán, before we finish up, would you play a tune? I'm looking over that flute there, the carbon fiber one.
Sure, yeah. That's it.
What is that in? Is it
F?
Yeah.
The 3/4 flute, as Kevin used to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So Kevin had a great little 3/4 flute with an ivory head joint.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful instrument. And I used to get this one out. It was like, his was about 200 years old and mine was about, the most modern kind of thing you can.
Yeah.
But it's a nice, it's a fun little thing, and you don't have to take care of it because it's carbon fiber. You can beat it out pretty bad, and people step out of line in the session.
Yeah.
Get them a wallop with it.
Yeah, we'll sponsor that, yeah.
Well, Kevin used to play a couple great tunes. The first one is like The Flowers of Red Hill. And he said Red Hill, I think, was like a place where very sick people used to go. Okay. And he had a beautiful version of it. And he had a lot of different twists. The great thing about Kevin is he had all kinds of different ways of playing tunes, and you hear him one week and it could be different the next week. And, and even though he was so generous with all of his time, if you asked him a direct question about something like that, he'd tell you a story about something else. He'd tell you a story that's like a riddle. You'd have to figure out the point of the story, and then that would point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
So then he used to play another one called, he used to say, there's no sex in our music.
Yeah.
There's only sorrow and uprising.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But then this one's called Come Up to the Room, I Want You.
Okay. fantastic. Yeah, spectacular.
Nice twist around that. Him and Albert Neary, another great old flute player that passed away a few years ago, used to play that. Those two together were excellent. And Malik Itawi on the Bowron. Yeah, you couldn't beat it. Great stuff.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Seán, for giving up your time and music. I really enjoyed that. And,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing you play later on the Cobblestones with Jesse and John Blake as well. So thanks so much, Milbicus.
Oh, thank you very much, Liam. Great to be here.